In tonight's Dorchester segment, we catch up on some new developments around the city election, as well as some plans stirring debate about housing on the waterfront. To fill us in is the executive editor and publisher of the Dorchester Reporter, Bill Forry. Thank you very much for being with us, Bill.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be with you.
Bill, I want to have you bring us up to date on a recent change in early voting plans, and some of this concerns Dorchester. What's the big deal here?
Right, Chris. This week, news kind of filtered out of City Hall that there will be early voting for ahead of the September 14th preliminary election, and the locations really became the lightning rod of attention. The list that was distributed to the City Council for their review showed that there were certain neighborhoods where there weren't any early voting locations set up, where in the past there had been. For example, in Dorchester in Upham's Corner, 02125 zip code, there was no early voting location proposed this time. The Strand Theater has been used in past years, and it wasn't on the list. And that got some quick notice from candidates for mayor. City Councilor Michelle Wu, in particular, was first to raise questions. Her neighborhood in Roslindale didn't have an early voting location as of yesterday morning. And John Barros, who lives very close to the Strand Theater in Upham's Corner, rose some of the same questions about why wasn't that part of Dorchester on the list. So Acting Mayor Janey, who was kind of being pressured on this matter yesterday, spoke out and said, yes, this should be revisited. And sure enough, within a few hours, city election officials had come out with a new list, which included 5 additional locations, including the Strand and other parts of the city, including Roslindale. So some quick action there, but prompted by criticism. And this is the season where we're just a few weeks away now from that preliminary election. And the competitiveness is out there. There's clearly there was some suspicion raised in that list that it was meant to be beneficial or maybe to the detriment of candidates who live near there. Maybe not, but the result was quick action to rectify it. And the good news overall is that we're doing early voting again. That's something that has been useful in past recent elections in Boston. There continues obviously to be great concern about safety around COVID right now. And so it makes sense to do this, and it makes sense to diffuse the vote out over a couple of weeks.
Well, in another development connected to the election, you're doing a multi-platform collaboration with a TV station in Boston. And I think you've already come out with a piece of that in your latest issue with the mayoral candidate. So explain that.
Right. Thank you, Chris. We're doing we've agreed to be a partner in a televised debate, which will be on NBC 10 Boston, along with New England Cable News and Telemundo on September 8th. It's Wednesday, September 8th in the evening. It'll be a televised debate with the 5 major candidates for mayor of Boston. They've all agreed to participate. It'll be one of 2 debates that week. There's another one the next day, which WBUR and the Boston Globe and some other partners, I think WCVB, is broadcasting that one. So there'll be head-to-head debates that week with the candidates who will be on the September 14th ballot. So the week ahead of that, we've agreed to be partners in it, along with the Bay State Banner, who are our friends who also publish here in our neighborhoods. So we're going to help by hopefully generating some questions from our readers. We're inviting our readers to share their questions. What do they want to know from the mayoral candidates that they don't know yet? What's most important to them? And some of those questions will be incorporated into that debate.
Well, you've already published answers to a questionnaire, and I have to commend it because it doesn't take things too deep into the weeds of policy, and it really gives you a distinct flavor about these different candidates. But one of my takeaways is that maybe there ought to be a draft Stacey Abrams movement.
Yeah, everybody seems to really like Stacey Abrams among this group, and can't quarrel with that. We asked these candidates, not only the mayoral candidates, by the way, but all the candidates for city council, the district races and at large, that we're covering to fill out a questionnaire. And we're pleased to say all of the mayoral candidates responded. Yesterday we published the elements of the questionnaire in the paper, and we also made the entire questionnaire answers available online. People can go to .news.com and read that for themselves. But yeah, we tried to ask some things that are maybe a little bit more offbeat about trying to get at who these people are who want to be our next mayor. We asked them who their political role models are, and a few of them did mention Stacey Abrams. Michelle Wu, for example, mentioned Mayor Menino, whom she worked for as somebody who she emulates, along with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who was also mentioned several times by candidates. Obviously, Congresswoman Pressley is unaligned with any of these candidates right now, and I suspect all of them would love an endorsement from Ayanna Pressley. We'll see if that comes for any. At this point, that's not in the cards. Elizabeth Warren was mentioned by several. And there were others. Interestingly, I thought Anissa Asabi George talked really not about politicians, but about her family, her father, her grandparents, immigrants to this country who kind of informed her political beliefs, according to the city councilor. President Obama came up a couple of times, especially from Kim Janey, who mentioned how important he's been to so many, and Mel King, who ran for mayor of Boston. Of course, back in 1983, was the first Black candidate who was a finalist for mayor of Boston. Just an esteemed figure in our city, is mentioned by several of the candidates. John Barros made sure to mention him, as did Andrea Campbell. And so, an interesting mix of influences. We also asked these candidates to sort of reflect on the last administration and to give their assessment of how they thought the Walsh administration did. A mixed bag there, not really surprising. John Barros, who worked in the administration of Mayor Walsh, gave it a strong mark and is proud, obviously, of his record in that regard. Acting Mayor Janey played it pretty much down the middle, said there's some elements she liked, there's some elements she hasn't liked. The toughest critique came from Andrea Campbell, I think, who gave the Walsh administration a C. She also gave a tough grade to acting Mayor Kim Janey's administration so far, another C. So, it just gives people a gauge of how are these people approaching the job that they want. And we did get into issues as well. So there's a number of issues related to education, housing, across the board, law enforcement, and public safety. So I think it's a useful thing to read through. And if people do have time, and I'd encourage them, take a look at this week's paper, but to dive deep into it, go online to .news.com and you can read all these surveys in full there.
I want to ask you about what you took away from the new census figures, especially about Dorchester.
It was still kind of trying to grapple with that, Chris. We've obviously seen growth here, and Dorchester is one of the neighborhoods that, along with the whole city, has seen growth. That's not a surprise. There's been a lot of new construction here. There's more to come. And I think, the biggest takeaway, generally speaking, has been that there has been a decline in the Black population in the city and in Dorchester. We've suspected that. It doesn't come as a surprise. It kind of reinforces some of the concerns that people have been raising over the last several years about displacement and the pressures on housing, which you've documented so well on your program. We've tried to do that in the pages of the Reporter too. So it still needs to be sifted through. These are not final numbers, but it's an indication that yes, there has been some displacement going on here, and that at the same time there's been growth. There's been new people moving into new construction. We're monitoring, what maybe 10,000 plus new units that are in the pipeline now, new residents, probably well over 10,000 that are in the BPDA pipeline right at the moment. So that's not going to change anytime soon. But politically, what it means also is redistricting is going to have some impact here in the city. We will likely see a new state representative district created in the city of Boston. Where that will be exactly, we don't know, but there'll also be some movement of precincts, and that process is now underway. So much more to report on that in the coming months, especially after this mayoral election ends.
One of your other recent stories is about a reaction to the latest changes in plans for some waterfront housing in Port Norfolk. And this is an area, I know the access isn't ideal if you're coming in from the outside, but what about waterfront housing in general? Because what seems to be happening here is that, you know, developers have to put new things in their plans now because of climate change and rising sea levels. And I'm wondering, does that put pressure on them to build more height, more density, and maybe more traffic?
It does in general put more pressure on, but it also, this is a unique location in Port Norfolk, Chris. It's, if people know the Venezia restaurant, and many of us do, and it's a great spot. There's a marina there right now. But it's right in the water. So it's on a peninsula, the Port Norfolk Peninsula. It's a bit tricky already with accessibility there. And so this has been a project, it's called Neponset Wharf right now, that would add, over 100 new units of housing, a lot of new office space, and also space for boating use there. It makes a lot of sense, I have to say, to do that mix right there. But the pressures that come with infrastructure to a place like that, combined with the concerns that are still being kind of raised and not really resolved yet about building on the water as we deal with climate resiliency issues and the attendant concerns about building on a wharf, essentially. It's being done, obviously, all over the city. And this is a place in Dorchester where it's been tricky. This has been 4 years now and plus that a development proposal has been sort of in development at this site and stalling out and then restarting. There's indications, though, that the BPDA certainly likes this project, and I think the current city administration is inclined to want to move something ahead here. It's been clear for the last year, both the Walsh administration and now under Kim Janey, they'd like to see a project happen and something move off the dime. There's still more to come. This comment section, the comment period is still ongoing for this project. And if you want to learn more about it, obviously, .news.com is one source, or you can go to bostonplans.org, review the proposal yourselves. There's still time to comment on it. But to date, it's been a mixed bag of feedback. Some people like it, some people don't.
And before we go, Bill, if people want to keep up on the latest breaks around the city election and the candidates, you've got the lit drop that they can check into as well?
Yeah, the lit drop is kind of a dedicated portion of our website. If you go to .news.com, you can find it pretty easily. You can also follow the lit drop on Twitter and follow .news on Twitter. That's where we often are moving around stories that are still in development, and we're just starting to push out there. So for real-time information, .news.com, @.news on Twitter. And obviously, we love folks to continue to support our print edition, which is out in circulation across the neighborhood right now.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to keep us posted.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
That was Bill Forry from the Dorchester Reporter.